All right, everyone, welcome to the Origins of He-ManOrg and the episode review site panel. We're going to travel back in time to the early days of the internet as we learn directly from the pioneers who established the early roots of the online He-Man and She-Ra fan community. And that would be these four fellows right here. I'm Jon Kallis. I'll be the moderator. I got to experience all of this live as a fan, going to all their websites, so it's very much a treat for me and interacting with them back in the day on the old mailing list. So if we want to go down the line, maybe everyone could just introduce themselves and say a little bit of who they are.
Sure. I'm Zadoc Angell with James, co-created the He-Man and She-Ra episode review website back in 1997.
I'm James Eatock. I co-created the episode review. This is like a confessions thing, isn't it, really? I created the website with this guy. He convinced me to do it. And yeah. So, yeah, here I am. Yeah, cool. Yay.
I'm Tyner, and back in 1995, I made the first fan site that somehow spiraled into what He-ManOrg is today.
Spiral. Out of control.
What was it called? It was like the email checklist or something.
Mailing list?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And I'm Matthew Ratzloff, and so Adam and I together created He-ManOrg.
It's an amazing statement, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I think it would be most appropriate then to start off with Adam, since kind of everything spiraled from his early days on the internet.
Sure. So, November 1995, I got my first computer with a modem, and when with my first internet account, I got 100K of web space.
Whoa, slow down.
I know. So, for those of you maybe who aren't as technically minded, if you go to He-ManOrg, basically any picture you look at, any single picture, is the total amount of web space I had for all the HTML, all the images, all the non-existent video, all the sounds, everything. So, and I was only able to update it once a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was a rule they instituted.
Weird rule.
So, very archaic. So I had this web space. I knew I wanted to make web pages, and I just willy-nilly just started making web pages for every single thing I could think of that had any interest to me.
You had like the Weird Al page?
I had a Weird Al page,
yeah.
the Yoo-Hoo chocolate beverage,
That's
the
right,
Mystery
yeah.
Science Theater 3000.
Big Wolf on Campus.
Well, that
You
was
did that a little bit later.
Much later. But
Yeah.
but around that same time, I'd recently rediscovered a VHS copy of The Greatest Adventures of All, which I had on an endless loop. So one of the very first things I searched for, with my newfound internet access, was He-Man. So I braced myself to see, all these photos of action figures and episode guides and video clips, and there was absolutely nothing. It is hard for me to fully convey how much nothing there was about He-Man. And anything else, G.I. Joe, Transformers, there are these enormous sites, active fan communities, and for He-Man, for whatever reason, there was just nothing. There literally wasn't a single photo of an action figure anywhere on the entire internet. So I would scour Usenet, which I don't even know how much of a thing that is
Even a thing anymore, yeah.
But anytime I could find anybody saying anything about He-Man, I would just sort of make a copy of it, or I would, take a note of their email address. And I just collected every single thing I could scour and put it all together in a little website. And people somehow found it. So every day or two, I would get another email with, "Oh, well, I saw your website and I have this. You should put it on your website." Or, "I think this is pretty cool. How about this?" And I did. So,
That's
Yeah.
I was going to say that's how I came along to meet this dude. Although this is the first time we're meeting ever since the 22 years where we first started talking. But I did a search for He-Man, and there was I think your website and was it Kevin Herbert's website, which was not even a website. It was just a
right. Yeah. There was before I started mine, there's a guy at George Washington University named Kevin Hebert.
Hebert. That's it.
He had
Hebert.
I wouldn't really call it. Yeah, like you said, I wouldn't really call it a site. But it was 2 pages about just he and his brother, the memories they had.
Yeah, it was just like playing with toys. And I was like, someone else remembers this stuff.
Right.
And then like, I always tell the story, like Adam Tyner was the first person I ever emailed. And not just like the first He-Man fan I emailed, the first ever human being I emailed. So I was like, oh, I need to get in touch with this guy, because on his website he had all these episodes that some hadn't heard of, hadn't seen in years. And I said, hey, you know, we started talking about a few episodes, and then that was, I think I said, I'm going to submit some reviews, because you had like that format. And then we started talking about just random little bits and pieces. But it's like, I'm communicating with a human that understands my feelings or depression.
Well, I think that brings up an important thing about the time here, right? Like, this is 95, 96. There's nothing online that's available. And everyone, there was such a craving to find other people that were also fans of He-Man and She-Ra and were into these cartoons and toys as much as all of us are. But I don't know if any of you felt this way, or any of you in the audience, but like, there was no one else to talk to about this stuff. And it's 95. The cartoons have been off the air for 8, 9 years. It's not cool to talk about it. It's not cool to be into it.
It really wasn't.
My family, they would say, "Oh, He-Man, that's so outdated." That was the phrase they would use.
Yeah, there, and you're like,
yeah. My mother would like find some little He-Man toy or coloring book or something for Christmas every year. So I had like some bit of nostalgia every year. But it was it's almost like a secret. It was like a secret how much I still loved these cartoons and was into them and watching them. And as a teenager, at this time I was like 15, 16 years old. That's kid stuff, and it's supposed to be gone.
In the past, yeah.
And it was so exciting to get online and find, because by the time I was getting online, this is around 96, your sites had already started, so there was something there. And it was so exciting to be able to like find like-minded people who were into this and cared about it like I did, because I couldn't talk to my family or friends or anybody in where I lived. It was huge.
Well, and it's important to call out, like, we were all about the same age at the time. So, I was like, I think 14 or 15 when I first started doing that. How old were you when you?
I had just turned 17.
Yeah, okay. So, and you guys were about the same age too.
oh no, he's the youngest, I think. How old
No,
are we?
Matt
How old are we
and I
now?
are-
Let's do an age check. Go.
I'm 36 right now.
38.
40.
36.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
there we go. So we must have all been around about the same age, I guess. Huh. Sorry about this.
Like, to tell a little bit about how I grew up. I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York, a 400-acre farm. I tell people to picture Vermont, whatever your stereotype of that is. That was my childhood. I had a graduating class of 33 in a public high school. It is so rural. Nobody else is into the arts. No one else is into like television and the Emmys and He-Man and toys and everything that Comic-Con and things like this are all about now. That just wasn't available to me, and so I think I really got online in order to find He-Man and He-Man fans and other people to talk to about this, because I remember going into like the computer lab in my high school and like secretly doing searches for He-Man and She-Ra, but like being embarrassed that other people would see me doing that or something. Is all right, if I save money and I can buy a computer and a modem, then I can do this in the privacy of my own home. And like, I really think I got the internet and bought a computer in order to find people like you guys, and ultimately a friendship that changed my life, and in meeting James. But and our friendship is so kind of remarkable. Here's this kid on a dairy farm, so isolated and rural, talking with a guy from London in the city, and we end up, striking this lifelong friendship and starting a website together. I mean, that's the power of the internet right there. That was just incredible.
And I had braids at the time for that, so they're all down here. So yeah, it was a real complete contrast of things. But yeah, you had the Scrolls of Grayskull. Was it Scrolls of Grayskull? There was like a monthly newsletter.
Right. So all those email addresses I found from people who contacted me and people I just devouring everything anyone had ever posted. I reached out to everyone I could, and I asked if they wanted to be a part of a mailing list. I didn't actually know what a mailing list was. What I meant was a newsletter. So yes, there's it's terrible. It's still on He-Man.org if you're masochistic enough to want to subject yourself to a 17-year-old trying to write a newsletter about He-Man. But yes, a couple dozen maybe newsletters.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, and I chipped in. And I said, "Does anybody remember this episode?" And like, And like, I was trying to remember these figures, the laser light figures and stuff, and it was just random memories. And it's so funny reading all that back, and you get the odd name and stuff. It's like, oh, that person's still alive, and most everybody's still alive, but that got depressing very fast. But yeah, it's just really weird to see this kind of almost time capsule, especially with those newsletters or mailing lists. And it was, yeah, it's just this amazing moment in time. You see all these names and all these random memories, and now it's like so easy to find this stuff. So what are those figures called? Oh, laser light. Thanks, Wikipedia, or whatever.
Yeah,
but back then it was just, yeah.
That is a real big difference now, because everything is cataloged and online. But back then it was like people were like piecing together like memories. So it was like, I remember this thing, and like a couple people would get together to talk about it, and then maybe like, you know, everybody would kind of come to a consensus, like, okay, this was actually real, you know, and it was just like piecing it together piece by piece.
Well, also that's kind of what kind of started you guys on He-ManOrg, right? Because you wanted to create something that was more than just like, you know, bits and pieces, and like a not an encyclopedia, like a catalogue almost of everything, the mini comics, and list it all. So that was like, which of you came up with the idea for He-ManOrg, or was it already?
Well, okay, so somewhere along the lines, okay, obviously, as we said earlier, we were all high school-ish age. If not a little younger, which is a roundabout way of saying we had no money. But we did, we did run into a professional comic book artist named Jason Moore, who had at least a little money, enough to register the He-Man.org domain name. And he didn't immediately have any plans for it. He just knew at some point he wanted to start a He-Man website. And he offered me web space, and he offered Matt web space. So I moved my website from its, you know, then current location to He-Man.org. So I was He-Man.org/Tyner, which is a whole other thing because people didn't actually believe my name was Adam since the URL had Tyner in it, but it sincerely is.
Yeah.
And then you had
in my case, I had sort of started off building this. So part of my interest in it was finding a subject. I've always been interested in computers, and so I wanted kind of an outlet for that, right? And so it was like a convenient subject for me, and I was interested in it. And so I started out building like this Windows application, right, with all this stuff bundled in together, all the covers and stuff, which I like meticulously scanned and cataloged in sort of an OCD style. And eventually it got to be too big, you know, it got to be like probably 20, 30 megabytes or something, which no one can possibly download. And so I put it on the web. And then it was on the web for a little while, and then the two of us got to talking, and it's like, why don't we just combine it?
Right. I mean, there were a lot of duplicated efforts.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need one site that has two separate lists of mini comics, for instance. So, yeah, we joined forces, and we asked Jason if he'd let us basically take over his site, and he was all for it. And he played an enormous role in the fan community, especially in those days, because the Guardians of Grayskull mailing list, which was actually a mailing list this time, was something he started off.
He started that. Is that the same as the He-Man mailing list?
Yes.
Oh, okay. God, all the names I've forgotten. But yeah, I didn't know he started that. Yep. Oh, wow. And that was where the Mighty Val Staples turned up as well, right?
Yes.
That's where we all found one another. That sounds really depressing as well. But yeah, everybody kind of names and faces in this room, we all kind of on this mailing list, and all having these random conversations again about Discovery, and there's a figure called Hero and stuff like that, and now he's in a glass case in the other room. But yeah, it's just very random. Yeah, I love that whole sense of discovery that everybody was doing.
Yes, and my first time hearing from Val was pre-mailing list.
Was it a lightning bolt?
Okay, so the first message I remember getting from Val anyway was an apology, and it wasn't because he'd slighted me or offended me. So he sent an apology, and he said,
I'm sorry, I'm going to take over your website.
No. He sent me a message that said, I'm really sorry that the quality of these photos aren't better. I'm going to, set up a light box. I'm going to take these pictures properly. So hopefully you can do something with these in the meantime. So he sets it up like an apology, like it's something I'm horrified about, but I'm overjoyed because these are literally the first photos of Masters of the Universe figures on the internet.
Yeah, he literally went through, this is back, film cameras. He literally went through, set up like a photo shoot basically for his entire collection.
Oh, wow.
And so he had like bed sheets behind, and he was like trying to get like the perfect angle so it was all white background.
Right.
And like he actually took a film camera and photographed
Right.
all of the figures.
We're not, this is pre-digital cameras, very much pre-smartphones. I mean, goes to the store, buys film, sets all this stuff up. He has to drive back to the store to get them to develop the film, picks it up again, then he has to scan it and email it. I mean, this was an ordeal, and it's, he probably spent, I don't know, $50 to do all that, and who knows how many hours. But yeah, I mean, it was just amazing to have something like that, because in those days there were no, this is before YouTube. There weren't any videos of He-Man. I mean, basically, if you didn't have it on VHS, sitting in your collection somewhere, you had no way of experiencing it. No online clips aside from the theme song. No.
A big part of those early days was trying to find the episodes. Everyone tape trading, the VHS tapes, the bootlegs, as you would always say. It was trying to find all the episodes, and that was a major source of connection, I think, for everybody in the early days, was trying to find episodes and make copies for each other and trade them so that you could build up your collection, because everyone had a separate collection and parts of the whole piece, but it was like a detective mission. We were all trying to put together the pieces to build the mystery of how many episodes and how many toys and what was real and what wasn't. It was really fun,
right? And it wasn't
powerful.
even like we had a list of 130 episodes, and oh well, we don't have this one, or this one. You don't even know how many there are.
There's no list.
No, because I had 72 on VHS. Then Adam Tyner's website, it was there's a bunch of episode titles I don't know, and then there was this VHS rental store, and that had a bunch of episode titles as well, so I was piecing them together, but there was no order, no production codes or anything. And then I did an interview with Larry DiTilio many years later, well, a year or two later, and he said, there's 130, and I'm like, okay, well, I've got that number now. This was 97, 98. But even then, it's we still don't know the titles, and then it was, the tape trading was happening, we still didn't have all the episodes, and the quality was varying, but then Zadoc turned up with an episode, Rod Hanna there turned up with an episode. Everybody kind of turned up hey, I've got an episode. And I remember getting the final two episodes. I think it was in August of 98. It was the last two episodes, which were the Once and Future Duke and Trouble's Middle Name. I say that, and then Zadoc messaged me and said, there's there's a season 2 of She-Ra. And I was like, what? And there was I think originally we thought it was only 14 episodes. And then Zadoc goes, there's another 14. And we used to do this thing, we'd got in touch, we'll talk about that, but he was talking about these episodes, and he'd send me little mini reviews about what the episodes were about, because we'd never even seen them at this point.
I mean, She-Ra was especially mysterious. I don't know if that's because there are no girls up here, but I was certainly a fan, but growing up where I did, it was so rural that I had Channel 3 NBC broadcast was airing He-Man. They never aired She-Ra. The only access I had to them was buying or watching VHS tapes you could rent at a video store. And then, this is, this is pre-VCR. I had a friend of my best friend growing up did have cable television, and he would record cassette tapes of the episodes. And so I think you remember early on, I had memories of episodes that I had only heard and not seen.
Yeah,
and I would tell you about some of them, and she was like, I don't remember any of these. And then one by one they turned up as time went on as actual episodes. But that's how hard it was to communicate and watch things and share things back then. It was
very hard.
Remarkable. But She-Ra, we found them all eventually.
Well, the amazing thing to me is how many people responded to this. So when we put this together, there was a mailing list, email server, right? And people would talk on that, but you didn't really get a good sense of how big the community was. And once we finally put the site together and we had the forums, it just felt like it blew up. People started signing up, and there was so much activity, and I was frankly amazed. I was like, there's other people who actually care about this stuff. At least for me, there was always something appealing about, some of my favorite authors are Zelazny, Jack Vance, and sort of those very plot-driven but very imaginative stories, and the sort of sword and sorcery aspect of this. It's basically sort of almost like a cynical marketing ploy of just let's put together Conan, let's put together Star Wars, and I don't know. It was like laser focused on appealing to me as a kid, and I think probably most boys at the time, and some girls too, and so yeah, I mean, that has always appealed to me. That kind of imaginative aspect, and I guess it appealed to other people too.
I mean, I think certainly for the two of us, it was like the cartoon.
Yeah,
the
was my
cartoon
religion,
was
yeah.
king, and although obviously we all had the toys and played with them, and but I think some fans vacillate to one side more than the other. But obviously for us, it was the cartoon. I think so much of it has to do with the magic of that Filmation cartoon and how warm those characters were and how much heart there was and how much you cared about them, and it was classic good versus evil, and Skeletor was a perfect villain, and how colorful, the saturated color of that cartoon is it's like the colors of my childhood. I just fell in love with it, and a lot of the writing. I mean, some of those episodes are incredibly well written, and we all just engaged and cared. But like you said, you try to find the history. There's no creator of He-Man. It's like Mattel trying to make a Conan thing that we would all buy. But I think if Filmation hadn't given it story and heart, it wouldn't have had that emotional resonance. I really believe that we all carried for the show and those characters. It changed our lives, obviously.
Yeah, kind of. It changed my life dramatically because this guy got in touch one day. I started doing this website inspired by Tyner and stuff, and I was like, oh, sorry, I just keep referring to you as Tyner. It's just, and I'd done this little crappy website, which was just He-Man and She-Ra, and there's random sections and text, and I thought, oh, I'm tired of this. I'm not sure I want to do any more websites. And then he got in touch a few months later and said, hey, would you like to? I think we knew each other a few months, and he said, hey, do you want to do an episode, a website where we review episodes? And I was like, no, not at all. And I had no interest in it. And he is it fair to say you badgered me?
Yeah, I think you just have too much time when you grew up on a farm. I don't remember how it hit me, but one day I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we reviewed episodes of the show, and then that would help people see the show or have some forum to talk about it and remember it as we were trying to piece together the episodes of the series. And it was like a Siskel and Ebert kind of thing. We would have different points of view on the episodes, and I came up with it, and I was really convinced it would be fun and something that we'd really get into. But yeah, you're in the beginning,
it started off as fun. I mean, I started off as this is the worst idea ever. And then it became fun. For a good few years, and it became, we got a nice following. I think by this time you guys were like, see you later, losers, and I was like,
we were picking up the mantle. Yes. But it was like an event, because we would do every Saturday was a new review. We tried to do a new review, sometimes we didn't, but because of the limited bandwidth on the website.
Oh God, yeah, you want to talk about technology. I had a server, and I could upload, I think it was maybe 1 megabyte. No, that sounds ludicrous. Maybe 5. Whatever it was, I could only host 4 reviews at a time. So every Saturday, I'd upload maybe about I don't know, 150, 200 files, again, on a 26K modem. So it's blip, 1 picture. Bloop. It's thank God I don't have a life. And that would upload very slowly. And then the following Saturday, I'm right, upload another bunch of reviews. Right, take these 4 down. So I'd have to watch these these files get deleted. Blip, blip. It's my heart was just doing that. It's just beep, he's crashed. So it was an incredibly mind-numbing thing, but people really cottoned onto this website. I was like, this is a really, really good thing you're doing. And it was okay, fair enough. And it got bigger, and there was a bigger audience for it. And then,
I mean, that's really a tribute to all of you who are sitting here today, is that you made us.
I hate you all.
You made us crazy and want us to do that every week. It was we gotta And the time difference actually helped that you were in London, and we're 5 hours ahead of the East Coast. So I would get my reviews and my work done on a Friday night, and then you'd be waking up and working on it, and then the upload would happen sometime on Saturday, and it would hit most of America on Saturday morning. So it was a thing that everyone. You could wake up and go see what the new review is, what that new nugget is, and it was a lot of fun. But a lot of the reason we were so invested and cared so much was that we got such positive feedback from people, and it was fun for us to hey, what episode are we gonna put out there and make people excited about it this week, or what quality episode that people haven't seen online ever are we gonna like debut? It was really, it was exciting and fun.
But then it got really good in like middle of '98. It was September '98. I was in Canada on holiday, and Zadoc sends me a message and says, "You never believe who's got in touch." And it was Robert Lamb, who's writer, storyboard artist, and master of all trades, filmation. And I was like, oh, cool. And so we struck up this, friendship with Rob. And Rob was like, hey, do you want the He-Man series Bible? And we're like, God, yes.
Yes.
And he'd sent us like storyboards and model all this stuff like that was nobody had ever seen it.
No one had ever pulled the curtain back on how it was made.
So we literally started uploading all this stuff to the website, and that kind of, we had more creators get in touch and like, hey, it became bigger and bigger, and it became uncontrollable, and this giant beast that I'm having flashbacks right now of what a nightmare it was at times to run it. And but yeah, we created something, and people just really liked it.
And it was fun. I mean, a lot of the pleasure, I'd like to think people just came to read our brilliant reviews, but a lot of it was that, people hadn't seen these images from these episodes since they were kids. And because of James's hard work, you would go through and capture 200 images from every episode, and then we kind of call them down and litter them throughout the reviews, so there'd be text. It's so blocky, right? A little paragraph, and then a picture, and then a paragraph, and then a picture.
All HTML.
On HTML. But it was great because people were able to see these episodes and, bring back those memories, or read about an episode that you'd never seen, maybe, or one you'd forgotten about, and it was really fun to be able to do that and share that with people. And we never did every episode. How many did we end up reviewing over 5 years?
139, I think, out of 223. So
was Brigus the last one?
Oh God, probably.
I think that broke us.
Yeah. Oh wait, literally. Yeah. So the funny story is that so Zadoc and I had known each other at this point by about 4 or 5 years. Running this website, never having met. We'd shared videos, which sounds weird. We'd sent each other VHS tapes on each other's birthday, and I'd be like, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." And
maybe you did that.
I did that. Let's get things clear. Yeah, that was me.
But it was like we have these time capsule videos of our
amazing
lives from when we were so young, because there was such hunger to share our lives. There's no Skype. There's no FaceTime, there's nothing like that. So we were doing, our relationship was all over email, and then twice a year phone call.
That's right. The phone calls. Yeah, and it sounds like a joke. Our email was called the Daily Email because every day he'd write something and I'd reply, and this email chain, if it was like Google Mail or something, it'd be 4,000 messages. It was just back and forward every day for 4 years. And then it was it got to 2001. I said, hey, I'm going to come out to America. I can't remember what the reason. I think it was just come out to meet you.
Finally, and Lee.
Yeah, and Lee, of course. And I thought, we get to, Zadoc and I will finally get to meet. And by this point, the website had become a chore. There's no denying that. But we finally met, and it didn't quite click. We ended up I say falling out is the best way to say it, but not with hatred in each other's eyes. It was just a case of, we'd been in each other's lives so much that when it came to this point of meeting, there was, what did I say? It was almost like a resentment towards one another.
I'm pretty sure it's the site itself. I don't
know. It was just like.
It was odd because you had this intense friendship for so many years. I think there's also too much pressure on it too. We're finally going to meet and we're going to be best friends
forever. I will marry him.
And then I actually came out to you during that visit.
Yeah, we were all in
my husband's here.
Yeah.
But it was, I don't know what it was, but the alchemy was off. I think we were also growing in different directions in our lives at the time, and for whatever reason, this website had kind of kept us, I don't know, in a different place in a different time in our lives, and so it's actually what we needed to decide that okay, we're ready to move on and do different things.
We literally sat there. I think we were in.
But it was sad.
You were I think you were show running on, what was it? Oh my God, Days of Our Lives or something? Or was it?
Oh no, I was doing an internship. I think
he was show running.
I was.
He was acting in Days of Our Lives.
I was a college kid. I think you're thinking of the internship at Bold and the Beautiful.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I remember watching Bold and the Beautiful being filmed.
But this is halfway through my college years. College was getting really overwhelming and demanding, and here I am secretly on campus, still writing these lengthy reviews and working on Friday night till 3 a.m. so James can get going. And part of the website's cumbersome nature was our own fault because
Absolutely.
I mean, the reviews started like this, and by the end of the website, there were pages. I mean, they were just these scholarly reviews of episodes. It would take you twice as long to read our reviews than to just sit down and watch the actual episode. You know,
true.
we were doing it to ourselves, but
Yeah, that's
you
absolutely
know,
true.
we loved it and we're into it. But by the end, it was time to
We
to move
we
on.
sat there like after your filming of the, what was it again, the Brave and the Bold, or the Bold and the Beautiful, or the
Yes.
whatever it was, and we sat
Some
there.
American soap
we
opera.
sat there in the like the we were having lunch and we were sitting there. I just remember saying we can't do this anymore, and it was just like we were trying to figure out why we weren't like getting on so well, and you know it just came to I just don't think we can't do this anymore. And you were tired of it, I was tired of it, and we just kind of went our separate ways. Like not like there on the holiday. It wasn't like, well, fuck off forever. It was we hung out for the next few days, week or so,
made it work.
and it was good. But yeah, it was like after that, it sounds really weird. Like the daily emails stopped. The website was pretty much dead. Val Staples got in touch and said like, do you want to run it on He-ManOrg? And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And then you realise that's a lot of hard work as well, because you have to translate. Oh God, so many HTML pages into appropriate He-Man.org code, and the way he was formatting the site and everything, and that was a chore, and I didn't want to do reviews anymore, especially by myself. So it was just, I thought I can't do this anymore, and we kind of officially killed it in, what was it, 20 years ago at the beginning of August. It was.
It was 20 years ago it started.
Oh, sorry, 20 years ago it started.
Yeah, it was
Sorry,
2002 when we ended.
2002
But at the time we had. Well, the irony is that at the time, Mattel was starting to do their new cartoon,
God,
the 2002 cartoon.
this, yeah.
So just as we were like getting tired of it, Ian Richter at Mattel had reached out to us and said, would you guys do a Bible of the original series for the writers of the new series so they can refer to it and go back to it?
This was literally after we said no more.
And we're like, well, they're paying us.
They did pay us.
And I don't even remember. I mean, it was probably like...
I remember what they paid us.
It's probably like minimum wage. I mean, for the amount of work, especially that he did. I mean, James.
Well,
Really
no, when
took
you
it
look
on.
back, it's like you were just happy to get official work for the first time. So I'm going to work on He-Man officially. You look back, it's like, what a chump.
How did we do it? But we did. That was kind of like the last
That was the
gasp. But it
last,
opened
yeah.
up an official relationship with Mattel and Ian, who was very involved on the Mattel side of the new series. And even on that trip that he came out, I mean, we had some amazing moments. We got to go to
Lou Scheimer.
Mattel. We got to see some of the artwork,
That's
and
right,
then
yeah.
we met Lou Scheimer. Lee Clevenger had been in communication with him and met him over the years, and that was the only time I ever met him and his daughter Erica, and that was like so moving that I got the chance. And you met him a couple of other times.
I met Lou
after
a few
that.
times. Went for lunch with Lou. It was glorious times. But yeah, he and I, our relationship friendship repaired itself when the first PowerCon 2011, I think it was.
Yeah.
So we hadn't we'd spoken like maybe once a year for
And Facebook friends.
Yeah,
and,
Facebook friends, all that stuff. So, and then I remember like the 2011 PowerCon, I was at my table. For some reason, I was standing in front of my table looking at it, going, "What a mess." And I looked to the left, and the Mattel booth was there. And there was like a glass cabinet with action figures in. I looked through, and I was like, and I could see like this figure. And I was like, "Is that Zadoc?" And like he came round, I was like, I always describe it as like running through the fields, like in slow motion. And I remember I remember just thinking, I was so overwhelmed because it was like everything, whatever issues we had was just,
It just melted away.
it was just
like-
nothing. It was like, oh my God, this is like one of my best friends. For those 5 years, we were inseparable online. And it was just amazing. Like after that, everything was just good again.
Yeah, it was
we don't
so-
exchange daily emails because we're adults. But it was just good after that. It was like,
Yeah, I think that's like the power of like old friendship.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can go back to
Plus, you look
those,
at that when
those root emotions.
when
and
we
feelings.
we were in our early 20s when we kind of went our separate ways, and then we re-established connection like in our 30s. So it's
And by that time, like we'd
so much has
we'd
changed.
figured out our lives in a lot
Who
of
we
ways.
are,
But I mean,
kind of.
I was so proud of James because I finished college. I work in television. I moved to LA.
He's
for
really
the
successful.
industry. I've done okay, but I've been so
He's so
thrilled.
successful.
I
I did this He-Man stuff. Oh God.
I've been so proud of what James has been able to build all these years and becoming like the expert on He-Man and She-Ra, especially the cartoons, and writing books and working on the DVDs, and that you were able to continue doing all that amazing work. And it just makes me so happy and proud when I see
like I say,
your
it's
name
like,
on those books.
Without this guy, that like Dark Horse book wouldn't have happened. The Return of Faker later tonight wouldn't have happened. None of this stuff would have happened because he was the one that kind of just, really pushed me to be a writer so I can do writing good. He's a fantastic guy. And it was to be where I'm in terms of working on the stuff officially over the years. It wouldn't have happened if this guy had said, hey, let's do this website. And I was like, oh, God, it's not this website. And now it changed my life. And so, it was all good.
Well, it's like what we were talking about earlier when I said I'm amazed at how creative the community is. Like, there's just like such an outpouring. Like, people have to write, have to create TV. They just have to create something. And I think that owes itself to I don't know, just the imagination of the series. Something inspired those people, and they kept going with it.
I mean,
and look who's working on basically every single book, action figure line, everything that's going on with He-Man now. I mean, almost all those people were.
Oh yeah, the people in the mailing list and that stuff who are just fans are like have gone, in certain cases gone to work on the brand officially. It's like, that's so weird. We were just a bunch of spotty irks like on a mailing list going, oh, I think it's great, and it's like, oh God, I'm working on it officially. Like, don't know how that happened, but yeah, it was.
I think, Matthew, you're right that there's that seed of whatever you had in childhood that inspires you to be a creative person, that makes you want to, write and create and draw or build a website or whatever it is. Like, I think that, I do work in the TV industry here in LA. I moved here to be in the business, and like most people, even like the lawyers in Hollywood, they had some creative seed in them that made them want to do our business, and you find that, and it's usually in childhood. There was like a TV show or a movie or something that just like you just loved it and were passionate about it and made you want to be a creative person. And I think for all of us up here, that would have been, He-Man. And I think about how much that little Filmation cartoon changed my life. I mean, I was so obsessed with it as a kid, and here I am on a farm in upstate New York, and like I wanted to work in television. I wanted to be creative. I wasn't sure how, but it led me to my college major was film. I moved out here I moved 3,000 miles to live in LA to work in TV. I met my spouse. I've set up my life. Like, so many of those things probably go back to that cartoon. I mean, that's crazy. It's just wonderful where it led us.
Oh, absolutely. I just consider the Filmation cartoon ruined my life, but that's another story.
Well, I think for you, a lot of the fun of it became not just remembering the old show and the memories, but discovering how it was made and the people who made it. And I mean, you just took off on that and really unearthed so many like secrets of how it was made. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. Going back to what Matt said, it was like seeing kind of the creativity flowed within me when you see that it's just humans that worked on these cartoons and the brand. It's like when you put names to faces or faces to names or whatever, that you knew that someone created He-Man, someone wrote that episode, someone did this. When you meet these people, it's like, well, they did it, so I've got hands. If you don't, then that's sucks slightly, but it's like, well, surely I can do this. And it was a case of just simply sitting down and letting that creativity flow. Like I say, with this guy to inspire, these guys to inspire that idea of, coding and making websites. This guy here, Adam, was the one like maybe wanted to do my first website. I was like, he can do it. I'm sure I can do it. Not as well because he was like super Cody man, but and then this guy was the one who inspired me to write. So it was like, I owe them everything. I'm not going to pay them any money. So yeah. And Jon Kallis was part of everything as well, so let's just remember that.
Well, obviously.
You've been very silent up there.
I'm not going to interrupt the good conversation.
No. I mean, Jon was a part of the mailing list. I remember the Shadow. The Shadow's been around for years, and he's still around, man. Still kicking. And still looking as young as he ever did.
I try.
I think he's like 18 now. He's just turned 18. I believe. But it's a lot of fun.
Well, we can open it up. We have a few minutes left for some questions, if anyone would like to ask any.
Are there going to be any questions?
So I had a question regarding reaching out to the fandom. So it sounds like a lot of people came to you, but especially early on without social media and things like that. Did you guys go to like any conventions, or did you do anything to promote?
No. I mean, that's a really good
There
question.
were no conventions.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you had your San Diego Comic-Cons, and I guess Well, there was like people went to. I guess there was a Chicago convention people went to, but like in terms of promoting our brand and website, there was nothing. It was just like the mailing list. Look at our latest review, or you go on the He-ManOrg forums in the early noughties. So it's stuff like that. But on the whole, there was no way of promoting. It was just word of mouth, and yeah, the mailing list was the big part. Yeah, it's weird to think back to that. It's like,
Well,
how the
I mean,
hell did
today
do
we
that?
would have had like a Twitter handle, and we would have been
Oh, yeah,
promoting.
yeah.
It would be so different, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't about building a brand back then.
And the other thing, I
oddly.
remember like we had a counter on our website, so you could see like, oh, look, we got 10 new views today. And I remember like on average, in the end, I worked out, I think we were getting like just over 1,500 unique visitors per week. Yeah, every time we'd update. So that was pretty good back then. I mean, like, yeah, that was good times.
Well, you keep mentioning the mailing list. As a surprise, we actually have the entire archive of the old mailing list on the screen right now.
Yeah, all our darkest secrets. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Please
Well,
don't.
it's right there.
Where?
It's up on the screen.
No, it's not. I can't see it. Oh, I see. It's empty.
It's empty.
Ah.
Yeah.
It was deleted.
John did a joke.
Yeah, that was actually
Waka.
that was actually my fault, accidentally.
We'll forgive you.
So what it was, I'll just tell the story. 2004, I was out of college. I was looking for a job, and you know, I was looking outside. I grew up in Kansas. I lived in Kansas my entire life, and so I wanted to leave, go somewhere else, and I wasn't getting any bites on my job search, and so I did a Google search on me, and it was like all He-Man and nothing about anything else.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
I get that.
okay, well, like I don't know if that's like hurting me or not. So I actually got in touch with Pear, who ran the mailing list, and I was like, can you just like remove only my emails from it? And the guy's like, sure, no problem. And then he responds back and he says, okay, I deleted the mailing list. And I said, no, that's not what I wanted.
Oh, no.
Can you restore it? And he's like, nope, no backups. Sorry. That's
Oh, wow.
literally what he said. He was just like, nope. So
The history is
that's
dead.
what happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, would you really want to like read about like Grayskull tales again?
Oh, man, yeah. No. Oh, good times.
We have time for like one more question if anyone else has a question before we wrap it up.
Okay, he's got a question.
You guys have inspired more than just He-Man. You know who I am and what I've done with Rainbow.
Who are you? The Rainbow Girl.
But it's not just like, you know how many of us are so appreciative that you brought all of us together, but you've also brought so many other fandoms together because you've inspired so many other people to copy you and do the same thing with
Oh,
other properties.
that's really sweet. You make me cry.
We've made so many friends, like, and I inspired, not inspired, but I helped these guys set up their website for a completely other property, so it's still going all these years later. And I
Everyone
just,
inspires everyone.
That's great.
It's a beautiful world.
And what a bizarre coincidence it is that the person who did the first He-Man website, first She-Ra website, we were like 15 miles apart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well,
Really?
I went to college in upstate South Carolina, and she lived in upstate South Carolina.
Bizarre. That's where it all began.
Well, I say let's give these guys a big round of applause.